Yo, what is good, everybody? It is your boy Golden Falls, Golden What Ifs, whatever you want to call me, and I am back. This is part 2 of What If Deku had a Bard Quirk. And as always, if you enjoy, show some love, leave a like, leave a sub, leave a comment down below, all that good stuff. Sorry if you can hear things outside. There's just loud noises outside of where I'm at right now. With that said, though, I hope you guys enjoy the video, and I don't want to waste any more of your time because I want to get right into the what if. Let's get it. Izuku Midoriya is with his entire class, well, you know, right at the USJ. The USJ is going to be run over by a ton of villains. And when he realizes it, well, it's a little too late to react. And it's not like he had the full-on power to react specifically, but he would see all of these villains pour out of these portals. Pro Hero 13 and Aizawa would tell them to stay back and, you know, be protected and so on, and they would try to, or at least stay back, but then they would quickly see that, well, it seems as if all of these villains begin to converge. All of these villains begin to converge on them, and leading to them actually getting transported or teleported away to a different area, leading to Izuku being dropped in a giant lake. As he's dropped in this giant lake, he looks around completely confused. I mean, what just happened? Like, seriously. As he's looking around, he would see, well, these villains that are kind of like fish creatures begin to charge at him. They begin to try and go and try to hurt him. And luckily enough, though, someone's able to swoop him up, or being that of Asui or Suyu, swoops him up and gets him out of there. He thanks her, of course, and would kind of be confused about what they should do. Like, seriously, like, they're kind of stranded here, or at least stuck, and there's some villains beneath them that, you know, aren't going to be the easiest to deal with. In which Suyu says that she doesn't have the power herself to actually jump across, and Izuku would tell her that, well, if they really don't have any other ideas, he does have maybe one. Now, this is a bit of a risk and a bit of a, you know, gambling chance, and he doesn't know if they're gambling type of people, but he tells them that he can cast something known as Long Strider into Featherfall and basically cast these two spells on them and hope that, well, they can jump across at least the distance that they're looking at. And of course, Suyu questions if this is going to be possible, and asks him, like, what are the chances of them actually making it across? In which Izuku thinks to himself and begins to think that the chances are pretty decent, maybe like a 60% chance, in which Suyu would respond that those are not good odds, like, at all. 60% is not that good. Like, there's a good chance that they fail. In which Izuku looks at her and shrugs and says that there's always a good chance that they're going to fail, so maybe they should just take the chance and go for it. In which he casts Featherfall on all of them and Long Strider on them as well, and he basically tells them it's either now or never. In which Suyu grabs both of them, being that of Mineta and Izuku, and they hold on tight as she jumps as far as possible. And as she jumps, she sees that there's no way she's going to make it, but as she comes falling back to the ground, she realizes that they're falling so slowly, being able to extend her jump even further. As they begin to glide through the air, she realizes that, well, they're actually going to make it, and it seems like Izuku's plan was a little bit better than, well, they initially thought, in which they make it to the end, or make it to the edge of the area. But the fish people are completely confused, seeing that they were able to get past them or get through the other part in terms of crossing the river of some sorts, or the kind of lake of some sorts, in which they're all completely, you know, kind of taken back by this. Like, how were they even able to do that? Now, Izuku would be heading over as he sees Aizawa finishing up with a lot of the villains. As he sees them finishing up with a lot of the villains, he thinks to himself that they should probably get the heck out of here, because this doesn't seem like the best spot to be in. But as they're about to leave, it seems like a hand would bust through a portal, or at least go through a portal, and is about to grab Asui. or at least the hand is about to grab Asui's face, but immediately Izuku would pull out his sword or his rapier and he would stab through the hand. As he stabs through the hand, though, the entire sword would just eviscerate because the hand would close and it would eviscerate the sword or the rapier. As Izuku would look at it and realize that it's completely in dust, he would feel extremely bad. I mean, come on, that was a really good quality rapier. He would immediately help Mineta and Asui get away as he looks toward Aizawa and can see that he's about to be basically mowed down by something known as a Nomu. The Nomu would then blast Aizawa, sending him flying at a wall, and Izuku would be in complete shock at the fact that the Nomu just absolutely destroyed Aizawa in one foul swoop. But Izuku runs down there, immediately jumping off to see if he's still alive. And as he can tell that he's still alive, he really is happy that he is alive, because if he wasn't, then he wouldn't be able to do exactly what he's about to do. He puts his hand on Aizawa's shoulder as he heals Aizawa to the most he possibly can. And as he heals him, Aizawa can feel massive replenishment. And on top of that, he can feel that he is basically fully healed for the most part. Now, he does still have some pretty bad pain all over, but he's still, manageable. In which Izuku would tell him that's the best he can do for him, at least at the moment, because he has a feeling that he's going to need something bigger very soon. And he needs to not worry, or he basically just can't give him more than what he has. Izuku would then place Longstrider on Aizawa and would tell him that he needs to make sure to stay away from that Nomu. They need to make sure they can stall out until the big guy gets here. In which Aizawa would look at him confused, but Izuku would immediately tell him, he means All Might. He's waiting for All Might to get. I'm waiting for All Might to get here. In which Aizawa would shrug his shoulders, saying that makes sense. In which they would both try their best to just avoid conflict for the most part, at least in this kind of situation. Izuku tries his best to fend off fend off the people that are in front of them, and he even gives his best shot to use vicious mockery, but unfortunately it wouldn't work super well against the Nomu. I mean, he could tell that the Nomu is kind of messed up in the brain a little bit, and it seems like the Nomu can't really kind of understand vicious mockery, or can't understand the horrible things that are being said. But then he thinks to himself and realizes something. Wait a minute, there might be a way for us to do this, and might be a way for us to turn the tides. In which Izuku is thinking to himself, well, you know what, this might backfire and might go really bad, but he might as well try it. In which Izuku would look toward the Nomu and push Aizawa out of the way as the Nomu would charge at him, and he would enchant the Nomu once again, utilizing a spell known as Friends. As he does this, the cast would begin, and the Nomu would be about to punch Izuku right in the face, but then he would stop. The Nomu would stop and just look at Izuku, and Izuku would smirk just a little bit. I can't believe that frickin' worked. Izuku would point towards Shigaraki and Kurogiri and tell the Nomu that those bad people over there are trying to hurt him, that he should go beat them up. In which the Nomu would slowly turn around, in which Izuku would laugh super hard as the Nomu would charge towards Shigaraki. Shigaraki would yell, telling him to stop right now, to not do a single thing. Don't even dare, you don't even think about it. But the Nomu is not stopping. It seems like the enchantment is stronger than anything that Shigaraki could have placed on the Nomu. As the Nomu would punch Shigaraki directly in the face, slamming him into the ground. Then going to grab Kurogiri, but Kurogiri would open up a portal, making it so the Nomu would appear on a different part of the USJ. Immediately, Shigaraki would be in complete shock at this, extremely injured, in which, of course, this is when Izuku would feel like this is their opening, that Aizawa needs to go now, and as he moves towards Shigaraki activating his quirk, it seems like Bakugo would come out of nowhere, and pin down Kurogiri, blasting his metal body. And as he's blasting his metal body, Izuku would be heading over to try and help to the best of his abilities. This is when Izuku would actually utilize something that he wants to try, because there's something that he needs to really give an effect on, because this might just actually help. In which Izuku would head over toward Kurogiri, utilizing his friend's enchantment once again, knowing that the Nomu would be basically broken away from this enchantment. But in his head, he's thinking that, well, Shigaraki just won't know this. As he utilizes this enchantment on Kurogiri, it seems like the enchantment doesn't work as well as he thought it would, thinking that maybe Kurogiri is actually a Nomu, but he's a lot different than any Nomu like ever. He realizes himself that this is completely different, that this Nomu is smart, is intelligent, and it seems like there is just massive amounts of kind of put together, like, mind control within this person. And he thinks to himself that if they could just keep him, if they could just get him away, they might be able to get whoever is stuck behind that out of there and back to the world of the living. But he doesn't know. I mean, he has no idea who he is, technically, right? He doesn't know really what's happening, but he decides that that's what needs to occur. And as a portal would open up beneath Shigaraki, them thinking that this fight is basically over, or this fight is more or less unable to be won, Kurogiri would try to portal himself out, but as he does, All Might would come out of nowhere and would grab the body of Kurogiri and throw it once again, slamming it to the ground, as Kurogiri, or the Nomu version of, that Nomu, quote unquote, would be knocked out. It seems like that All Might just got here just in time, but they were able to handle the Nomu, or at least the extremely powerful freaking thing, kind of in different means. But Izuku would be thinking to himself that this guy, this Kurogiri, this person, this creature, whatever he is, he's different. He's different than every other Nomu. And after the USJ incident, this is something he would talk to Aizawa about. They would have a lengthy conversation about this, saying that Kurogiri isn't your normal run-of-the-mill Nomu. Like, there's no way that he's just some brain-dead creature. That's not what he is. In which eventually they learned that the Nomu themselves isn't necessarily a brain-dead creature either. It was a human that was actually brought back and basically mind-controlled to be a creature that would fight for them. And they think that, well, an imprisoned Kurogiri could be exactly the same. In which this would make Izuku think, if he is exactly the same, then maybe there's a way to get whoever is behind that back. In which Aizawa would think to himself, like, this is insane. Like, do you really think that this is possible? Do you really think that this could happen? In which Izuku nods his head. I mean, yeah, technically, yeah. I mean, there definitely is a world where this makes sense, right? In which he says to him that, hey, man, like, there's no guarantee that he'd be able to bring him back, but maybe they'd be able to get information that they really need. I mean, this is a more advanced version of a Nomu, obviously, so maybe they can. In which Izuku basically tells him, like, the reason why he knows he's a Nomu is the way his spells work on him. Because, well, let's just say the Nomu acted a certain way, or was affected a certain way, and the Kurogiri was affected a very certain way as well. And yes, it was slightly different than a normal Nomu, but it was nowhere near a normal human being's reaction. In which, of course, Aizawa would be shocked to hear this. I mean, this is a pretty crazy revelation, like, just overall. In which, of course, Izuku would tell him, hey, like, he's expecting pay by the hour, of course. In which he would be joking, but, not really joking, of course. Now, this would lead to more investigations on what Kurogiri is, who he is, and eventually they would learn that this actually might be someone of Aizawa's past. And Izuku would continue to work on kind of learning new spells and learning new kind of bardic inspiration spells that would allow him to actually get more out of Kurogiri. Now, this isn't easy. Like, he has a healing spell, but a healing spell is not going to work on this thing. On top of that, he has a restoration spell, which would get rid of, maybe like a poison or a disease, maybe a paralysis or blindness, at least to a certain extent. But this will not work at all either. Like, he needs something more potent. He needs something that is extremely powerful. And that means he needs more kind of preparation and more kind of experience with the spell Lesser Restoration. So that's what he tries to do. I mean, he tries his best to lean into the healing part of this whole thing, in which Aizawa would tell him that they have the UA Sports Festival coming up very soon. So, well, if he wants to participate in that, he probably should. In which Izuku would kind of think to himself, it does sound good to participate in the UA Sports Festival, but he knows that in a technical sense, he'd be kind of outclassed, right? He would have to go through a lot of different ways of doing certain things, and he'll be honest, there's not much benefit in the UA Sports Festival. But he does tell them that he would love to participate just in a different way, maybe in a different, more fun way, in which Aizawa would ask, what does he have in mind? In which Izuku tells him that he wants to sing a little bit of a song while right after Bakugo does his little, arrogant speech, in which Aizawa would look at everyone that's surrounding them, including, all the teachers and stuff like that and faculty, in which they would all shrug their shoulders and Aizawa would nod his head. All right, kid, you got it. In which Izuku would go to the UA Sports Festival, not being able to participate, being basically called out and marked out on all the rosters that he is not participating in it. And after Bakugo's annoying speech and arrogant speech, Izuku would begin playing a song, and this song would be used on his violin, and let's just say everybody would be enchanted by this. I mean, everybody would be in complete awe, and everybody would be cheering him on as he's performing, and he would then basically tell everybody that Bakugo is a jerk, and he basically sucks, and that they should boo him at every chance that they possibly get. And he waves them all goodbye, as Bakugo would get extremely pissed by this. I mean, like, he would be extremely mad at the fact that basically he undermined him. But Izuku would wave him off, saying, well, it seems like he's not going to get a chance to beat him up because he's got to go now. Bye-bye now. In which he would turn invisible and just go away. In which, of course, this would piss off Bakugo, being extremely annoyed, in which Aizawa would watch this and would kind of just chuckle at it, kind of laughing and thinking to himself that is definitely one way of actually approaching what you're going to do. In which Izuku would eventually arrive back at where they were, and he would continue his kind of like training to basically evolve his Lesser Restoration. Now, this is where all of his focus would go. So there is a bit of a pause in terms of him learning new things outside of the kind of healing aspects of his bardic kind of powers, or bardic spell casting. Now, this does take a while because it does kind of take a lot of mental concentration and also a lot of understanding of what this is or what he's actually capable of. And there's a lot to understand, right? Lesser Restoration's easy, right? It's a basic idea. But Greater Restoration, we're talking about something totally different. We're talking about petrification. We're talking about purification. We're talking about charms, stuns, curses, all of the above. We're talking about all of those. So he tries his best and tries his best to work with certain things that could possibly be affected by it, and certain things that could possibly be benefited from him utilizing Lesser Restoration, or in the future, Greater Restoration. And this would take a while, days on end, but eventually Izuku would actually get or be capable of utilizing this spell. Now, when I say days on end, I mean days on end. So he actually doesn't have really any people saying like, oh yeah, we want you to come to our agency for an internship or anything like that, which does suck, but Izuku kind of shrugs it off. But it seems like Aizawa has plans for him anyways, so he shouldn't have to worry much about it. Izuku would go over toward the prison to where Kurogiri currently is, in which Aizawa would be there as well, wondering if his old friend would finally show his face again, in which Izuku would approach him and would put his hand basically on Kurogiri, where, you know, it's not in the shadowy part, where it's kind of like where that metal body is, and he would basically utilize greater restoration. Izuku immediately would feel drained by this, but as he utilizes it, the smoky aura of Kurogiri would slowly dissipate, as well, someone would show his face, being that of Oboro. As he would show his face, it seems like everybody that is watching, President Mike, Aizawa, would be in complete and utter shock, in which Izuku would ask him if he's feeling alright, in which he would look around and would say that he feels tired and cloudy, and that he feels like he shouldn't be here. In which Izuku, well, he shrugs his shoulders and says that, well, to be honest, there's a good chance that you shouldn't be here. You were probably dead, and now you're alive, or sort of alive, and you were probably in limbo the entire time. In which, of course, this would completely shock Oboro, asking who the hell is this kid, and why is he talking about death, life, and all of the above. In which Aizawa and, of course, President Mike would walk in and would ask him what he remembers and what's going on and what he thinks of the situation. And of course, he doesn't really know. I mean, there's definitely a lot of question marks that are going through Oboro's head, in which, of course, this would lead to Izuku saying, like, yeah, I think this is time for me to head out, that he has to continue his training and work on some other things. I mean, he really wants to throw a fireball, so he would like to do that eventually. In which he's about to leave, but they would tell him to stop, like, to wait. In which Izuku would shrug his shoulders and decide to wait with them just a little bit longer. Now, he would watch as they would conversate with him, but as they're conversating with him, they realize that this is kind of odd. It's as if he's in this weird state of mind where he could talk to them and he could do things like that, but he's no longer of the land of the living. He is kind of on that in-between, in which they would ask Izuku if he could bring him truly back to life, in which he would shrug his shoulders and say, hey man, I barely learned how to cure that thing, okay? We learned how to cure Nomus based on a spell. I mean, there's no way I'm going to be able to bring him back to life. I mean, you think I have a scroll that I could just slap him with that would just bring him back to life? And then they would pause for a second and ask him, well, do you? And he would respond quickly with a resounding no. Like, no, no, I don't have that. That's ridiculous. Look, man, spells only go so far, and even probably the secret spells, there probably is very few that would allow him to bring back someone that has been killed or dead or something like that. It is very awkward. I mean, let's be honest, guys. This is a very interesting thing. He tells them that if he ever figures out how to, completely and utterly bring him back to life, how he used to be, he'll let them know, but there's a good chance that just doesn't happen. There's a really good chance that just doesn't happen, and that's just the reality of it, in which they're all kind of sad by this, but even the kind of weird, life, half dead Oboro would kind of tell them, like, hey, it's okay, like, he was able to cure him of whatever the hell that was, and now he's somewhat alive. Yeah, he's probably only got a little bit of time here and probably doesn't have much, but at least he was able to bring him back for a little bit to say hi and say his goodbyes, in which Aizawa and President Mike would be sad about. But on top of that, let's be honest, getting rid of Kurogiri is a big thing for the villains to lose. And yes, the man might pass away in the next couple of days, but still he would make a renowned sacrifice that would basically lead to, monumentous things happening in the near future. Now, of course, this would lead to everything kind of, continuing on. At the end of the day, Izuku has to continue on with what he's doing, his training, and so on and so forth. They can't dwell on what occurred and what is happening. They have to continue pushing forward, and that's exactly what Izuku's going to do. But he does think about the whole portals thing, and he definitely wants to kind of think about that, himself, at least to a certain extent. Now, this would lead to Izuku actually taking on a bit of an internship with Aizawa, Now, this is a bit of an awkward internship because it's more of a fighting type of internship, because this is kind of him learning how to utilize Aizawa's scarf with someone by the name of Shinso, and also trying to basically learn more hand-to-hand combat skills than he possibly knows at the moment. Right now, Izuku heavily relies on his spellcasting and heavily relies on certain things that he's able to do, or his capabilities that allow him to do certain things. And they continue to kind of train with Aizawa, learn new things, learn new capabilities, and Shinso and Izuku become pretty decent friends. I mean, Shinso is kind of like a Debbie Downer from time to time, but Izuku always finds, the fun in everything, even when it's, life or death situations. Izuku would tell him that he has a unique power, like he has a unique quirk, and they both do. And they both need to find their own way and their own way to approach certain things, and that's exactly what's going to happen. They're going to find their own very unique way of approaching everything that is going to happen, in which Izuku doesn't find that to be, a bad thing at all. I mean, is it going to be annoying? Is it going to be hard? Is it going to be kind of, this kind of irritating process? Of course. But almost everything is an irritating process, and he doesn't mind it, striving for greatness in kind of a different way. Shinso and Izuku would be completely different cases in terms of trying to gain power and strength, and I think they understand that for a large degree. Now, this would eventually lead to the internships being shut down because, well, the unfortunate and timely, demise of Tenya Ida, especially without the help of Izuku Midoriya being there. Tenya would fall, unfortunately, to the hero killer. Now, the hero killer would be actually subdued via many other heroes, and that it would include some other hero students like Todoroki. But of course, Izuku would know nothing about this and would just hear that Endeavor was actually able to get his hands on the hero killer and subdue him after, well, he would take down or end the life of Tenya Ida. Now, this would lead to them obviously going off back to UA, and there's a whole conversation that needs to be had with Aizawa, and Aizawa telling them all that they really need to focus on the task at hand. Focus on them becoming the heroes they want to be, and that's exactly what they're going to do. In which all of them would dedicate what they're about to do next to Tenya, or their long-lost friend and also fellow student, and now they're going to study hard and get ready for the final exams that would lead them into the forest training camp. Now, the final exams would start with the written portion, which Izuku doesn't have that much issues with. The written portion is a pretty basic one, and one that Izuku doesn't find to be very difficult, like, at all. Izuku is very easily able to kind of make his way through the written portion, acing it very easily. But then this would eventually put them in a position where the practical is up and coming. Now, who does Izuku face in the practical part of the exam is the real question. Now, Izuku's quirk is a little bit odd in terms of what he can do, what he's capable of, and kind of what he would kind of do against certain foes or certain opponents. Now, normally he would be facing off with someone like All Might with the help of someone like Bakugo. But this time around, All Might actually isn't intertwined in the fights of the UA, or the final exams of UA. Now, this would lead to Izuku actually taking on, well, Shota Aizawa. Yes, not with anybody else though, 1 versus 1. A fight between Shota Aizawa and Izuku Midoriya, student and teacher. But Aizawa wants to see what this kid has truly learned, especially with all the help that he's given him in terms of battle experience. Now, what can Izuku do to someone like Aizawa? Well, Aizawa thinks that he can actually utilize his quirk erasing kind of factor in a good way. But what he doesn't know is that a fight between him and Izuku, in a technical sense, isn't as easy as he thought. because when their fight would begin, Aizawa would try to set a trap for him, but Izuku would be able to read exactly where this is coming from. But once they actually begin to fight, Izuku would begin to expand a bubble around Aizawa, casting a spell that would be known as Silence. Now, as he casts this spell, Aizawa no longer is able to utilize his quirk, and no longer is able to utilize a lot of the things that he's capable of doing. It seems like his movement is slightly restricted, and on top of that, his ability to use his quirk and also his ability to utilize his scarf is is completely null and void. And Izuku looks at him and says that a fight between him and him, or between Izuku and him, is very, very interesting. He tells Aizawa that he is one hell of a teacher, one hell of a person, but if he really wanted him to have, a bit of a chance in this fight, he really needed to get the upper hand right off the bat. In which Izuku tells him, while he's in complete silence, or completely silenced via his spell, he would tell Aizawa that yes, he's impressive, yes, he's one of the best, yes, he's one of the best hero teachers, or maybe even one of the best heroes, but the unknown is still the unknown. And truly, the unknown is beautiful. But now, it's time for a bit of a sleep, in which Izuku would cast the spell as Aizawa would feel extremely drowsy and eventually pass out entirely, leading to Izuku winning almost in a matter of a couple minutes. Everybody is shocked to see this. He just took down their teacher. This is absolutely insane. After Aizawa wakes up, he would congratulate Izuku, but at the same time be kind of thinking about himself, about what he needs to do to better himself in the feat of combat, or basically what can he do to figure anything out to make Izuku even better, because this is insane. The fact that he was able to kind of determine and eliminate Aizawa, or at least defeat him in a way that nobody was expecting, in a way that Aizawa wasn't even expecting, is something that many of these students, many of these future heroes will not be able to develop even in their wildest dreams. But nonetheless, Izuku has impressed many of the heroes, many of the students, and even Aizawa himself. But after this is all said and done, and everybody goes through their final exams, this would be the end of the final exams, and what occurs is them heading off to the forest training camp. And the forest training camp, well, it's going to be a little bit different this time around, and Izuku Midoriya is going to continue his hardcore training, and training as much as possible, learning spells and development as much as he possibly can. Because at the end of the day, his physical ability may not be up to par with his spell casting and his support ability, but this forest training camp would allow him to hone all of his abilities at the same time. But with that said, this is the end of part 2 of What If Deku Had a Bard Quirk. And if you enjoyed, show some love. Leave a like, leave a sub, leave a comment down below, all that good stuff. And I hope you guys enjoyed the video, like I said, and I hope all you have an amazing day. Later.